Here's an update now. Coronavirus stories making headlines. Amid a nationwide debate on whether or not to reopen schools, Mayor Muriel Bowser has announced that all Washington, D.C. schools will remain closed with full-time distance learning instead. This abandons the initial plan to use a combo of distance and in-person instruction. Bowser said the decision to keep schools closed in the nation's capital due to virus metrics, parental concerns, and opposition from the teachers union. The Pharmacy Board of Ohio reversed their decision to ban the use of hydroxychloroquine at the governor's request. The dispute arose after Dr. Anthony Fauci said that trials have shown consistently that hydroxychloroquine is not effective in treating the disease caused by the coronavirus. Well, Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio said the decision should be between a doctor and a patient. More on that later in the program. Also meantime, Wisconsin's Governor Tony Evers has issued a mandatory mask order for all residents in his state. That order takes effect tomorrow, making Wisconsin the 34th state to require face coverings. Under Evers' order, face masks will be required for anyone age 5 or older while indoors except at a private residence. Wisconsin has a population of nearly 6 million people and has recorded 900 deaths from coronavirus. Those are some of the stories we're following for you for right now. For more breaking news, head to NewsMax.com.
A shocking new report from the New York Times. Teachers' unions are threatening to strike if schools reopen, while at the same time pushing to limit remote teaching via video and Zoom. Why, you might ask? Well, one Florida union president said it's because, quote, many teachers have expressed anxiety about how they and their homes would look on camera during live teaching. You saw that. Anxiety over having to clean up your home before virtual class begins. Here to discuss, Max Nelsen with the Freedom Foundation Labor Policy. He's the director there. Max, there's a massive debate happening across the country on when to reopen schools. And here you have teachers threatening to strike if classrooms open. Now they're too anxious to get on camera. And I get it. If you have an underlying condition or you're at risk for COVID, I understand wanting to stay home. But I'm struggling here to make sense of being camera shy as a valid excuse.
Well, I think you're onto something there, Emma. We need to be moving to reopen our schools as quickly and as possible, wherever it can be safely done. Now, that's going to vary from place to place. The virus has taken a toll on different communities at different levels, and so it's certainly reasonable to think that maybe distance learning is going to have to be a part of that. But the idea that teachers' unions are going to stand in the way of our kids' education and shut down even those distance learning options, there's really no excuse for it. Professionals all over the country have adapted to the COVID-19 epidemic everybody's using Zoom, everybody's using teleconferencing, video conferencing options now. It may not be ideal, but none of this situation is ideal. It's a workable option for those students and those schools and communities that need telelearning, and it's very unfortunate to see some teachers' unions standing in the way of that.
Yeah, and these teachers are educated, of course. I'm sure they would also be aware of the science that comes with sending kids to school. And in fact, it is in favor of sending kids back to the classroom because of all the outcomes that would be more negative to keep them at home. And in fact, the children, they're just not as at risk for COVID-19. So the science is really on the side that you're suggesting.
That's correct. And even the Center for Disease Control has now come out and said that the best available evidence from countries that have opened their schools shows that COVID-19 poses low risk to school-age children and that school-age children are unlikely to be major drivers of the spread of the virus. So we're not the first country to be in this place of reopening our schools. Countries across Europe and Asia have done so already, and so far the evidence doesn't show that has resulted in an outburst of the virus. Even here in the United States, daycare centers have remained open throughout the pandemic as essential workers continue to go to work, continue to do their jobs, and their children still need child care. And those child care centers have not shown to be drivers of viral transmission either. So the evidence, the best available scientific evidence at this point does show that schools can be reopened safely. And again, we should be moving in that direction wherever possible as quickly as we can.
And when we think about the reopening plan, of course, it's going to vary sort of district by district. Even in my home state, I've got a younger brother who's still in school. He's a private religious school, so they are committed 5 days a week. They'll be in the classroom. Again, it's based on the COVID cases in your area. But the public public school, they're going to do this sort of 3-day virtual, 2-day in the classroom. This mixed approach of being back in the classroom come, the fall. And you've got to wonder, Max, is that the right idea to do this sort of half and half, this virtual learning in the classroom, out of the classroom, maybe only half the class shows up during the time? What do you think?
Well, I think everything should be on the table. And again, it is going to vary from one community to the next based on what's happening with the virus in those communities. And so I think you are going to see a lot of hybrid options. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Again, as long as the driving concern is opening schools as quickly and safely as we can. The key here is flexibility. And I think you mentioned a good point about public schools approaching this perhaps differently than some private schools. And I think parents and families are in a situation right now where they need the most available options. And so we should also be thinking about encouraging or enabling parents to take advantage of private schooling or charter schooling or make it a little bit easier to homeschool. There's some legislation in Congress right now, the School Choice Now Act, that would provide some one-time scholarship funds for families to take advantage of these alternative educational options if their local public school isn't serving their interests as best as possible. And so adding some flexibility and choices for parents is a great option to consider as we try to navigate schools reopening in the fall.
Yeah, those parents want to get back to work, too, and it's hard to do so when you're also teaching your kid at home. Max Nelsen, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You got it. Still ahead here on NewsMax, CEOs from some of the biggest tech giants, they were grilled by lawmakers on Capitol Hill the other day. Will anything be done to stop their widely documented censorship? We're going to talk about it coming up after this.